everyone, and welcome to Tome of Uselessness. Dan here, solo recording, and I wanted to talk about Project Hail Mary. Not only the movie, but also the book, because I like to read the book after I've seen the movie, and so I recently saw the movie, finished the book yesterday, and so I just kind of wanted to talk about both, and, some comparing and contrasting and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I wanted to talk about the movie first. It's directed by Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, who I was very mistaken. I thought they had directed more stuff, like in particular the Spider-Verse movie. The first one, I thought for sure, but it turned out I was wrong. It was like 22 Jump Street, I think, was the last thing they directed. But they've been so producing and, more behind the scenes kind of stuff. But so I was mistaken about that, because this movie very much falls in line with some of their previous works where I was like, oh yeah, totally, like those guys know how to put together a movie. But yeah, so I was mistaken about that. It was written by Drew Goddard and Andy Weir. And Andy Weir, of course, wrote the book that the movie is based on. And I think Drew Goddard worked with him previously on The Martian. Let me double check that. I have a note somewhere here. Yes, he worked with them on The Martian about it. So it was the same writing team. Both movies are pretty good. Let's see, it's got a budget of $200 million. The box office so far, it's pulled in $533 million worldwide, so doing pretty well. The composer of the score, Daniel Pemberton. Cinematographer, Grieg Fraser, edited by Joel Negron. Production design by Charles Wood. And the VFX in the movie, for a $200 million movie, unsurprisingly, are quite good. But we got good stalwarts in there. You got ILM, Framestore, Renault AFX, Lola, Wiley, Buff, and Sony Pictures Imageworks, which I was kind of surprised at because it's an Amazon MGM production. But Amy Pascal is also a producer on it. And so she used to have, or I don't know if she's still at Sony, but she has a big Sony connection there as well. So lots of stuff there. And of course, the effects for Rocky are lovable. Puppet character. It's a puppet for most of the movie, so it's a lot of creature work and stuff like that in the movie. And for our cast, we have Ryan Gosling as Ryland Grace, Sandra Hüller as Eva Stratt, James Ortiz as Rocky, Lionel Boyce as Carl, Milana Ventrub as, I'll butcher this, Oliesa Ilkunya? She's Russian. Ken Lung as Yao, and Priya Kansara as Mary, voice of the ship, I believe, like in the computer that helps them out. But yeah, it's interesting because Ryan Gosling was like the only choice. They, like when they bought the movie rights in 2021, he was essentially right on board because he's also a producer of this movie. And so it was always kind of going to be him. But what I found interesting in the movie, oh yeah, I'll just say spoilers, sorry, I'm sure something will slip out, but this in particular is that like he's really good and very enjoyable, but he's Ryan Gosling, so of course, when he's like just a high school teacher, but he's wearing a nice sweater and great outfit, and you're just like, yeah, you just seem, it's a movie, I understand, he's like movie star handsome, right? But he's like a teacher. And later in the movie, we find out how he wasn't supposed to kind of go on the mission. So maybe, depending on how the movie was shot or put together, like it could have been more interesting if in those previous scenes he was like maybe a little more plump or had put on some weight and stuff like that, just so then we could see a transformation to when he's kind of more in mission mode and stuff like that. But, that's a minor thing. He's still really good in the movie and enjoyable and charismatic, and you want to see him doing the science and what have you, and succeed. As mentioned, James Ortiz is Rocky, and so he's the puppeteer as well as the voice of Rocky. Well, one of the main puppeteers, but he was doing like the voice, and then they were gonna maybe dub it like Darth Vader style, like, but they really liked the voice, so then they were just like, he's the voice. Which is kind of interesting because in the book, as they interact, Grace and Rylan, Rocky's people kind of speak like in song, like whales, tones and stuff like that. In the book in particular, he mentions how, he starts to learn their language, and Rocky learns English from Grace. And at the end of the movie, he's interacting with him without like a translation program and stuff like that. And in the book, he really starts to pick it up like while they're working together, except for once in a while when there's like a new word, and then he enters it into his translation database. So I wonder if there had been the idea of doing subtitles the entire time and then like mixing in musical notes like he does in the book. Basically, like the dialogue will be like Rocky will say something like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And then it'll just say like, it'll show 4 musical notes and then the sentence will continue. And then Grace will have to be like, hey, what was that word you said? I didn't get that. And then, then he'll pick it up kind of thing. It's just another thing that they could have done with the movie. But obviously they went, with a voice-over kind of scenario. Makes it easier on the audience. There's no doubt about it. But I just thought that. I was like, oh, that's kind of neat. That could have been a thing like in the movie if they'd done subtitles instead. If you're unfamiliar, which I was going in, but Project Hail Mary is about a spaceship, the Hail Mary. It's sent out to Tau Ceti, basically on a mission. It's the apocalypse on Earth. There's an organism that's eating the energy of the sun, and then they find it, and they identify it, do some science, and etc. And they look around our local kind of galaxies, and they realize that Tau Ceti's sun is not dimming, whereas others in the area are also dimming. So they're like, hey, whatever's going on in Tau Ceti, we need to figure out why the astrophage, if it's there, why is it not killing the sun? And if it's not there, why? Kind of thing. So they send the Hail Mary. It's 11.9, I think, light years away, or 11.3 light years away. That they build the ship, the astrophage, it turns out, as an organism, also stores like great amounts of energy, so we can use it as a fuel source as well. And so, boom, they're sending off a ship. And it's going to be a suicide mission with 3 people on board. It's going to have like a captain / commander, a pilot / mechanic, and a scientist. And they're off. And basically we start the movie, blam, Ryland Grace wakes up, and it's the same in the book. Like this was really good job adaptation of, what's in the book to the script. But basically, yeah, he wakes up, doesn't know where he is or who he is, and he's like, what is going on? And finds his 2 crewmates dead, and he's alone. And he's just like, what am I doing here? Basically starts to piece it together about how like, oh, okay, I'm on this mission, etc. And they gets to Tau Ceti, finds, the sun, finds the astrophage, and basically encounters an alien ship who is also there from Iridium 40, because the same thing. They're in the local neighborhood, like about, I forget the distance, but it's like 12 light years, or it's around the same distance, maybe 15 light years from Tau Ceti, and they interact, and it turns out it's this rock alien, and he's got spider-like movements and stuff like that, and then they work together to try to figure out why. And this was something that, reading the book, of course, the way the movie is structured, it's very much, again, the same as the book, where he'll be doing some stuff like that and kind of thing, and then he'll encounter, like, say, a problem, or something will come up, and it'll flash back to him on Earth, and basically either encountering some science or encountering something that will then lead him to the answer of where he is now. And, like, the book is very much like that, but the book has more time to go in depth about everything. So, like, we meet more scientists along the way, and like more explanation about like the engines and how they work, and how like this piece of science works, and like the radiation shielding and the ability of the ship to spin, so then it creates a centrifuge, so then it can be at 1G, so then they can do science and stuff like that. So there's a lot more of that in the book versus in the movie. We get some of those flashbacks, but it's more just like from Grace's perspective, and like it's just like him, say, like demoing the piece of tech for somebody, but it's not explained about like where they got the tech from. Or they have 4 probes they're going to send back, the Beatles, and they're designed by like a Canadian scientist. And again, in the book we meet him and he explains the tech and etc. But in the movie they're just like, he's like, oh, I just got these probes. Right? So it's just a lot of, it's just stuff like that kind of thing, where there's just some more depth or explanation for some things. Because in the movie, I'll get to it later, there's just like some, not hand waving, but it kind of speeds past a couple of the things, whereas the science in the book can be more explained and what have you. But yeah, let's go back. So he meets an alien, and then they start to communicate, and basically it turns out they're super advanced, and he's an engineer. Rocky is an engineer, and he's like super good at that, but their science is not as good or as advanced as human science, because it turns out Rocky's whole crew died except for him inadvertently, because they didn't realize that there's radiation in space, and so they were just unprotected from radiation, except for him, who was near the engines, and the astrophage basically protected him from it. And so, by a quirk, he is alive from that. And so then they can work together. But it's never explained. This was something that, reading the book, I was hoping an explanation for it. And basically, in the movie, like I said, Grace wakes up, he finds his 2 crewmates dead, and there's no explanation, right? And in the book, in particular, they go through how going into a long coma, because the crew was in a coma for 4 years, well, he was, that's dangerous for humans, very dangerous, and that there's actually potentially a gene that can help, that some people have, that can allow them to be in a coma for a long period of time without too much damage to their systems. And Grace and the other 2 crew members are one of these people. It's like 1 in 7,000, I think they said, in the planet population has this gene. Something on those lines. Anyway. And so, in both in the book and the movie, like I said, he wakes up and they're dead. And there's no explanation. And then eventually, when there's flashbacks and etc., and you meet them, it's never explained why they died. Like, the ship is meant to keep them alive. There's feeding tubes, oxygen. The reason Gosling has muscles in the books explained that he's like, given electrotherapy for his muscles to maintain movement and stuff like that, so that, he doesn't come out of his coma full of atrophy and stuff like that. So my theory did Strat, who runs the entire Hail Mary project and everything like that, command the ship not to keep the other 2 alive so that Grace would have all the resources possible to complete the mission? So he wouldn't have to answer to anybody, and he can make all the decisions necessary to complete the mission. Something risky might come up, but then Yao might try to argue it and stuff like that, right? It's not explained in the movie. It's also not explained in the book. Which, again, because the book's written from Grace's perspective, so he wouldn't know. He just, like I said, wakes up and they're dead. But yeah, it's just a question that I kind of had, because all of the personal effects are still on the ship and everything like that. So it's like they got on the ship, but was there a sabotage type scenario where Strat said to the ship, don't keep them alive after you put them into comas because of that potential reasoning? I don't know, because again, the major spoiler here is that Grace wasn't supposed to go on the mission. There was 2 other scientists that were meant to go, and they die in an accident performing an experiment on astrophage a week before the ship's supposed to leave. And basically she shanghais Grace onto the ship. She basically puts him into a medically induced coma before takeoff, and he just wakes up and he's on the ship, and then he doesn't remember that. In the book, it's explained why he doesn't remember is because he's given like a drug developed by the French for interrogations that basically wipes out people's short-term memories. In the movie, they don't say anything like that. It's more just kind of played like, oh, I've been in a coma, so, I'm just having fuzzy memories kind of thing. Which is what she says in the book as well. She's just like, you're not going to remember. It's basically, this is what's going to happen. You'll remember eventually, but by then, you'll already be like in the mission. So, yeah, I don't know. Like I said, Strat is very much depicted in both the book and the movie, but more so in the book as just like, ends justifies the means. It does not matter. She's trying to save humanity because in less than 30 years, there's going to be like a 10-degree drop in temperature from the astrophage, and crops are going to die, and food and etc., and there's going to be wars. There's a great scene in the book that's not in the movie where, because in the book she explains how, like, hey, you're going on the mission whether or not you agree to this scenario, and in the movie they just kind of like drug him, put him in a coma. In the book there's still a few days, so they just like house arrest him, and then she comes and visits him, talks about history because it was actually her major, and how wars were always about food for most of human civilization. And she's like, it's gonna be about food again, and it's gonna get bad. So she is just like, and there's a couple other scenes too as well throughout the book that I enjoyed with her and Grace, basically, where she's just like, I'm doing this to save humanity. It does not matter at this point. All laws, all decisions, it doesn't matter. And then he gives her like, I'll see you in hell kind of thing, or go to hell. And she's like, yeah, I will. It's not like the last thing she says to him, because she knows, she's like, I'm damned from everything I've made people do, but it doesn't matter to save humans. Like I said, a few things there that I really enjoyed that are differences between the movie and the book. Rocky and Grace, they team up. Rocky comes on to Grace's ship. They go to Tau Ceti. Like they examine the sun, and then they see like how the astrophage is going to a planet. They go to the planet, they collect samples, and then there's like a bacteria that is a predator of astrophage. So they're like, cool. They have to get close to the planet's atmosphere, so it causes the ship to issues and climactic stuff. It's really great. This was something, again, book movie difference. In the movie, when they're trying to escape the planet's atmosphere, Grace gets smashed into some control panels and then basically is like blacked out, and because of the gravity and what have you. And so Rocky, like our atmosphere is bad for Rocky. Rocky's atmosphere is bad for humans. It's like pure ammonia, and oxygen like burns Rocky. So Rocky smashes out of his tunnel system he built and grabs Grace and drags him to like the med bed kind of thing. In the book, Rocky does smash out, enables like the centrifuge and spin to get out of the atmosphere, and then collapses, and then Grace actually pulls him into his like enclosure, into another area where he can be more protected from our oxygen atmosphere. So they save each other. Like Gosling like burns himself in the process, when he's all bleeding, etc. Where versus in the movie, he's just like conked out, and Rocky saves him, and then scene kind of thing. So I was kind of like, oh, that was kind of an odd change. That I liked how they saved each other in that scenario. In the movie, this is the big climactic point, as well as in the book. But then in the movie, while Rocky is still recovering, Ryan Gosling just does like all the science off screen, and we just get some like occasional dialogue with unconscious Rocky, where he's like, oh yeah, we found the amoeba, it dies to nitrogen, so I bred a new one, and etc., and it's all good. Whereas in the book, like, this is eventually Rocky recovers, and then eventually they start together working on how to test the Tau amoeba, and then eventually like build breeding farms, because he wants to breed a nitrogen resistant Tau amoeba, because Venus has a lot of nitrogen and the Iridian planet has even greater amounts of nitrogen. And so then they build like tanks that can like breed successive generations of this amoeba by feeding it astrophage and giving it just like a slightly more amounts of nitrogen every generation, until eventually, they breed one that'll work. Very cool. Science. Yeah, so like I said, in the book, that's like more step by step, versus in the movie, it's like immediately kind of glossed over. And then this was something, again, a big departure from the movie and the book. In the movie, they get back to Rocky's ship, and then they got their samples and everything, and they're like, hey, that was great. Part ways as friends. it's emotional. And they leave. And on the way home, the Talmiba escapes and causes a issue with the astrophage fuel lines. Oh, yeah, big thing. It's a suicide mission because humans only have enough fuel to get to the Tau Ceti, do the science, and then they're supposed to launch the probes. Rocky has extra fuel, so he gives it to Ryan Gosling. And the reason it's explained in the book why, I don't think it was explained in the movie, it was just like Rocky's ship is giant, is that in the book, this is hinted at, is they don't understand relativity. So they just, loaded up the ship with so much fuel because they thought they just have to go, 15 light years or whatever. But it's like, no, when you travel near the speed of light, you shorten the time, right? Anyway, that's the reason he has a ton of more fuel. Gives fuel. Ryan Gosling's on the way home. Hooray. It's in the book, it's heavily factored, is food. He doesn't have a lot of food because they were never supposed to go home. And he has coma slurry basically. And it's just kind of like a chalky protein drink kind of thing. And he's like, well, this is going to suck for 11 years of this. But on the way home in the book, or in the movie, movie we're talking. Yeah, astrophage the Talmiba gets into the fuel lines, and he's like, oh no, my fuel is corrupted. He manages to sort it out and what have you, and then he figures out that it broke out of the xenonite containers that Rocky had built. And he's like, oh crap, Rocky's entire ship is made of xenonite. So if it can get out of the xenonite, it can get into Rocky's, whole infrastructure and screw him up. So he's like, oh darn. He's like, we're going to launch the Beatles back to Earth with the samples and all my data. And I'm going to go back to save Rocky. And which he does. He meets up with Rocky. Very good. In the book, though, the Talmiba escapes while they're breeding, or after they've bred all the successive generations, it escapes into the fuel. Oh no, this is before. Sorry, before. It escapes and gets into all the fuel lines. They lose power when they're still near the planet's gravity well. And so again, him and Rocky do a bunch of science. And what they do is they actually use the probes because they have separated fuel tanks. They attach it to the ships and then they escape the gravity pull of the planet. Very cool. And then they shoot their way towards Rocky's ship. And they figure out, what it was basically because it had been exposed to oxygen and it just kind of was able to freeform and get it into the fuel lines while both he and Rocky were injured, right? And so they purge everything, they clean it all up, and they're like, yeah, we're all good. And then they separate to go their own ways. And then it escapes from the xenonite containers. So basically they had already known that it was, very aggressive and very resilient of an organism. And then the same thing occurs in that he goes back to save Rocky, after launching the Beatles, and then heads back. And then they abandon Rocky's ship and go to Iridian to save their planet too. And at the end of the movie, we have a scene of Strat watching some of Grace's materials and collecting the samples and being like, okay, she's on an icebreaker ship, and she's like, okay, let's get to work, right, kind of thing. Whereas in the book, he's on Iridian because, again, his perspective, he has no idea if it worked. And then Rocky tells him that, hey, our scientists have noticed that the light from Sol has started to become brighter again. And so, he's like, yeah, the mission worked. So yeah, slight differences, but ultimately the same outcome. I just liked how the scenes in particular in the book when they ran out of power, very tense because they're starting to drift towards the planet again, and the ship is not meant for that and will crash and burn up in the atmosphere. So they have to figure out a way to get out and then purge all the fuel lines. And I knew while reading the book that the Talmiba obviously is probably going to escape again, and he even hints at it because he's like, yeah, he's using all the xenonite and everything, what could go wrong? Right? So it's like it was heavily foreshadowing that there would be a further issue. Yeah, and then like I said, I really liked that reveal, how he never was supposed to go on the mission, and in the final kind of log when he's talking to Strat in the movie, he's like, hey, you were right. I was the guy for the job, but I never thought so, and you won't get a chance to tell me I told you so, kind of thing. Whereas in the movie, or the book, sorry, she basically like lays into him how he's a coward, like entirely a coward, because she's like, you wrote a paper that people didn't like, and then you left academic life, and every time there's been a challenge, you've just like shied away from it, and you suck, kind of a thing. But I liked Yao's sentiment in the movie in particular, because Grace is like, well, you guys are really brave. It's a suicide mission, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, it's not about being brave for like everybody or humanity. He's like, it's about being brave for one thing. And, he learns about that, and he is brave for Rocky, right? Like, I want to save my friend. Which he does. There's a scene in the movie that they're kind of doing like some partying where Strat sings karaoke. It wasn't in the script, apparently. Gosling overheard Sandra Hüller singing and asked her to perform 48 hours before doing that, and then they selected Sign of the Times by Harry Styles, and she sang. It's a great scene because, again, they're partying and stuff like that, and Grace goes and finds Strat, and he's like, I don't know, it's kind of weird that everyone's kind of partying, because he's so focused on the suicide mission aspect of it that he just, clearly his character is a coward, doesn't want to think about that, and she kind of is like, hey, everyone's got to keep their spirits up and blah, blah, blah kind of thing. And then, yeah, she sings this song, and it's, there's some melancholy there. Yeah, so as I was saying, that Rocky is a puppet for the most part. There's a couple shots where he's CG, but yeah, they really like I said, the performance of the puppeteer, and so they kept him on there. Don't think there's much more for me to say. I would recommend both, actually. I really enjoyed the movie. I really enjoyed the book. I've heard how, because I haven't read The Martian or Artemis, that Andy Weir also wrote, but I heard The Martian is more technical in a lot of ways, and so that some people maybe didn't enjoy Project Hail Mary as much because of that. Whereas I enjoyed Hail Mary a lot because while there is some technical science, and like I said, I mentioned that they meet scientists and there's a lot of explanation about stuff like that. It's not the main focus of the book. It's more just like weaved throughout the story. So I enjoyed that a lot. And so I might not read The Martian because I'm like, I don't want to read a technical physics manual. Like, I enjoy physics, don't get me wrong, but that's not kind of what I want to read when I'm sitting down for a leisure read. So I'm not sure there, but yeah, I both enjoyed the movie and the book. I would probably recommend I'd lean more towards a cinematic experience if you can. They're extending as of today, I think, the cinematic run of the movie. There's some great effects work, some great model work, some great creature work, and I feel like I should have looked it up, but basically it's like, they learned from Interstellar, which learned from 2001, which learned from NASA footage, right? Like, they learned how to make these things look really good in space, because there is tons of great model work and everything like that. I mean, there's so much of the movie is shot either in an enclosed space because he's in a space capsule, and then there's like a lot of stuff is filmed on an aircraft carrier, and what have you. So, but yeah, I really enjoyed that. And then I enjoyed the book. It wasn't too long of a read. I forget the page count, but it took me like a week. But yeah, not easy read, let's say, but less technical that the sciences, like, I was like, I don't understand what's going on. It's like, no, I understood the sciences, because it's explained to you. He's like, oh yeah, we need to make, like I said, they're making the Talmiba, and he's like, Venus has an atmosphere of, CO2, this and this and this and this much nitrogen. So he's like, we need to make something that can stand 8% nitrogen. Let's go. And you're like, yep, got it. Right? Like, the physics of space travel and what have you, it's constants, right? Like speed of light and how much thrust we're getting and etc. It's just like, yep, it's not so beyond understanding that myself as a layperson, I could get it. So I would recommend both as well. I'd also recommend doing it backwards as I usually do. Watch the movie, then read the book. Because, like I said, it's just more expanded and what have you. So, yeah, enjoyed them both. Yeah, you can check out our website, tomeofuselessness.com. You can email us, tomeofuselessness@gmail.com with questions, reviews, topic suggestions, what have you. We got more episodes out there with Devin and myself, or just myself, talking on some stuff. And, stay safe, and thanks for listening.